Each rib has a different height and profile. And I think what I want to do is I want to have the cradle about 1/2 inch high. So this would be the build table right here, and I make a cradle like this. So in order to make sure that all 4 cradles are the same height from the build table, I'm going to mark 1/2 inch from the top, and then I'm going to measure from the center line of the rib. In this case, it's 1 29/32. So what I'll cut out is this part right here. And the poor doggy, he got mauled pretty good by a neighborhood dog a few days ago. Hope you're not squeamish, but yeah, he got chewed up pretty good. So he's got the collar on to keep it from licking himself to death. He's not much of a fighter. 2 sheets of 1/2 inch thick balsa were tacked together to make 2 sets of cradles. I need to finish shaping these. I'm going to use my poor man's spindle sander for this. Here's one for the tip rib. I'd actually cut 4, but I think it's going to work better with 3. Look out. Look out, Radikowski. Look out. I think it's going to work better with 3. So what I'll do now is tack glue each one of these cradles to the glass, and then I'll tack glue the wing to the cradle. The cradles do a pretty good job of holding the wing. If you try to rock it, there's no rocking, no rocking. This side of the wing is good as well. There is a little bit of rocking right here. Maybe you can see this tip rib. So I probably have a little bit of twist right here in this wing, but by tack gluing this to the cradle, it should take care of it. I am adding a little bit of washout to the wing. Since this wing is now upside down, instead of raising the tail or the trailing edge, I need to raise the leading edge. So I'll put a little 1/4 spacer up underneath the leading edge of the tip rib, and that does give me a little bit of washout. Might not be able to see it, but there is a very slight amount of washout in there. Because I did that, raise the leading edge, I had to add a little bit of a shim up underneath to support the leading edge here. So now I'm going to tack glue in all of the cradles. All right. That part is all good. Because of the bend at the dihedral break, I could not make up a one-piece spar for the bottom of the wing. Therefore, I made up individual spars for each wing half. Now that the spars are in, next I'm going to include is the spar joiner. Now to put this in, you have to cut out a little bit of the two R1 ribs. So to kind of maintain some structural integrity, I'm going to add some shear webs in front. So for the spy joiner plate right here, it's 3/16 birch ply. Again, I can't get the birch ply in Taiwan, so what I'm using is 1.5 mm ply, which is about 1/16 of an inch. It's pretty close. So I'm going to laminate 3 1/16 inch pieces up for 3/16, and then I'm going to use carbon fiber between the two layers, so I'll have 2 pieces of carbon fiber. Forget about that one. Well, I'm waiting for that epoxy and carbon fiber to cure for the spar joiner. I'm going to start working on shear webs. The shear webs go on the back side all the way to the end. Plans call for 3/32, but once again, I'm going to shortchange that a little bit. Instead of using 3/32, I'm going to be using 2 mm. Another key thing about shear webs is they need to be vertical. If you do them horizontally, then what's going to happen is they're going to flex. That really doesn't do you much good. But having the grain vertical, well, that gives you a whole lot more stiffness there. To really get maximum effectiveness from them, they need to be in contact with both sides of the rib, the top and the bottom, completely all the way around. That fits pretty snugly against both the sides of the ribs and the top. Now the top, and I'll have this top sit just slightly below, maybe a 64th or so below the spar, so I don't have to worry about trimming it down. There, it sits on the bottom sheeting and then just slightly below the rib. So I've got the shear webs in, except for the last 3 bays. This wing is really very stiff now as it is. The aerodynamic forces at the tip really aren't as great. Plus I'm going to have, the sheeting on top of here as well. Next morning, let's see how my plate turned out. Oh, that's stiff. Oh yeah. Straight. Stiff. That's pretty nice. I like that. Cleaned up the spar joiner. Looks pretty good. It's a little bit oversized in length here, but that's okay. I can trim that down. As an aside, I had a piece of 3/16, and I wanted to do a little bit of a test. I wanted to compare the laminated piece to the birch ply 3/16. Now this, as you saw, is laminated 3 pieces of 1/16 inch lite ply and then 2 layers of carbon fiber. So I weighed them and they're pretty comparable. The laminated part actually came out about 2 grams heavier. That could be mitigated, I think, with the amount of epoxy used. I think I used a little bit more than I really needed. About the same weight, but the real difference is the stiffness of it. So this is the birch ply, and I'm going to try to get this so you can see the angle. And then the laminated part is considerably stiffer. I mean, this is quite flexible. So this laminated light ply is actually really very strong. The comparison in cost of materials, I don't know. Light ply is cheaper than Baltic birch, but then you have to add in the cost of the carbon fiber and the resin. So I don't know. Anyway, on with the main show. So now it's time to add this. So what you're to do is to cut out ribs 1 and 2 and kind of slide this in. So this is what I have. Alright, that is a little bit better. It's pretty much flush. That's nice. Now, of course, this is the center part of the bottom. It's going to be hidden by the belly pan. So if the sheeting is not exactly perfect here, that's not a big deal, but I mean, that's pretty doggone nice. All right, I'm going to call that a win. I don't think the joints are going to be quite close enough for wood glue to work well. So I'm going to go with 30-minute epoxy. So now what I want to do is add a little more security. Remember, I don't want to have to add that fiberglass center section, the very old school way of doing things. The next thing to work on is the leading edge ply doubler. It's 1/16 inch light ply. Very, very snug fit. I'm going to be using wood glue. Now that's just about its final position, so I'm going to add glue. There's just a little bit of the dowel sticking back out past the spar joiner, so I'm just going to put glue on it and then bring the dowel all the way home. I've made my servo mounts. It's just 3mm light ply, and then I glued on some wood. I'm not sure if this is a softwood or a hardwood. It's something tropical, I believe. It's glued on, and then the servo sits on top. And now, just to make these mounting blocks just a little bit stronger, I'm going to add some carbon toe. To add this carbon toe, I'm just going to fan it out a little bit and try to capture both sides, the wood and the plywood. All right, that is pretty tough. I think for a servo mount that should be sufficient. So the next thing was to create the mounts that this plywood piece rests on. Initially I was going to have the servo sit even with the center line of the ribs, but that sort of presented a problem with the mount here. So what I'm going to do is angle it just a little bit instead of having it level. And this is exaggerated, but angle it this way. Back of my servo clears, and I get about 3 holes coming out from the arm. A template from card paper, stuck it in here, marked it, and now I'm ready to glue it in. Now I really don't want this piece to move before the glue sets and before I can put clamps on it. So I'm just going to tack it with some CA. The other side was done with the same process. To ensure that there is flush and good contact with the ply mounting plate to the wood blocks, I'm first going to screw in the left side of the ply mount plate to its glued in wood block. Then I can go in and position the other wood block underneath the ply mount plate and glue it in. Clear packing tape and candle wax were applied to the ply plate to prevent sticking. And I'll be using some 21-inch extensions. The flat servo mount's about ready to be glued in. This is just 3mm light ply. Before I did that, the center ribs was a little bit wobbly, so I added some triangular gussets to stiffen it up a little bit. And then having the mount bridge between 2 ribs, that helps considerably. And then of course the sheeting over top of it should help lock it all into place. And I also added some stiffeners here on the bottom to keep it from bending, flexing as much. That tied in with the triangular gussets makes it pretty steady. I have the balsa piece inset into the ribs so that the top of the plywood mount will be flush with the top of the wing, top of the ribs, so the sheeting will go over it smoothly. I'm going to be going old school with this. I'm just going to go ahead and use tight bond and then weight it down with magazines and some weights. That seemed the best way. The wing, because of the compound curvature, sheeting kind of wants to buckle a little bit. So I think the best way to get even weight on it is to go with the magazine method. I'm not going to do the leading edge now. I'll save that and hit that with thin CA. Let's see how it turned out. Overall, it feels pretty good. That's that pucker that I couldn't get rid of. You can see here it puckered because of the compound curve. That's okay, this part gets covered with the belly pan anyway, so if it doesn't look so great, it's no big deal. I do need to make sure though that it is in full contact with the leading edge, because this all locks everything into place. The wing has been fully sheeted with the excess trimmed and sanded flush, with the exception of the aft center section of the wing. That will be taken care of after the flap linkage is installed.